Dwayne Patterson in for Hugh Hewitt today as he continues along on his Hillsdale College cruise. I am going to be with you today and Friday, both weeks, this weekend, next week. Kurt Schlichter will be along tomorrow and next Tuesday. Mark Davis from our Dallas affiliate, AM 660 The Answer, will be along on Monday or on Wednesday both weeks. And Ed Morrissey of Hot Air, my old buddy Ed Morrissey, will be here on Thursday and maybe next week, but we'll see. I may have to do an extra day. There is a ton of stuff going on. The world of warfare changed over the weekend. I don't know if you caught that news, but there is a lot of stuff going on that you need to learn about if you did like what a lot of Americans do, take the weekend off and just kind of go enjoy life. There is a lot of very momentous things going on around the world, and a lot of it is not good, but I'm glad to have you here joining me today. We kick things off with the events out of Boulder, Colorado over the weekend as I'd like to write it off as a deranged lunatic. He certainly is deranged, and he certainly is a lunatic, but it may be more nefarious than that, as he decided to show up to a weekly march of largely Jewish Americans. Doesn't have to be Jewish Americans, but largely Jewish Americans who do a walk and kind of a silent protest every week around their synagogue in Boulder in a park to remember the hostages still being held by Hamas, the terrorists in Gaza. And an Egyptian national who is here illegally, he was admitted under a visa during Joe Biden's administration, and he overstayed his visa. He's here illegally. And decided I want to kill all the Jews around me. He fashioned at least 2 Molotov cocktails and deployed them. And he had as many as 14 others that he was ready to deploy. 8 people were burned. There was as many as many as a couple hundred people that were present. He just threw Molotov cocktails into a crowd of people just trying to exercise their American rights. Donald Trump reacted to it. I'll read you what his statement is in a minute. Caroline Leavitt held a gaggle out on the front lawn before going on Fox News. Here's what Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary, had to say. Let's play cut 18.
What can you say to the Jewish community today to ensure that the White House is doing everything they can to keep them safe after the horrific attack in Boulder, and also the 2 Israeli embassy staff who were targeted just last week here in our nation's capital?
Yeah, we have seen 2 horrific cases of anti-Semitic violence in our country in the last 2 weeks, and it is unacceptable to this president and this White House. And rest assured to all Jewish Americans across our great country, this president has your back, and he's not going to allow anyone to take part in violent terrorism. It's acts of terrorism in our country, and that's what this case in Boulder, Colorado is being investigated as. Kudos to our FBI director, Kash Patel, for immediately calling this a targeted terrorist attack. That's clearly what it was. But I'd also like to point out that this administration has done more than any administration to curb this violence and to curb illegal immigration. We secured our border in record time, but we're also tightening up our visa process and our legal immigration process. And we know that this this terrorist, was allowed into this country by the previous administration, was foolishly given a tourism visa, and then was illegally allowed to stay. These individuals are going to be deported, and we're not going to tolerate such violence in our country.
She also went on to say this about the suspect, Mohammed Sabri Soliman, again, an Egyptian national who was screaming "Free Palestine" as the crowd was starting to become engulfed in flames after he threw a Molotov cocktail at it. Here's Caroline Leavitt, cut number 19.
Is there concern in the administration that there could possibly be some
sleeper cells here in the United States. What type of pattern is the administration looking at as far as terrorist cells here in the United States?
Well, there's certainly a concern that the previous administration allowed way too many terrorists and illegal immigrants into the interior of our country. And that's why the Department of Homeland Security is working overtime to arrest, detain, and deport as many illegal criminals and terrorists that we can in the United States of America. And any act of violence will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
So they are worried about terror cells. And if that didn't keep them up at night, the implications for what Ukraine just pulled off in Russia over the weekend with Operation Spiderweb, recreating, refabbing commercial trucks with a false top on them. Underneath the actual top of the truck is a false bed right underneath that, where a bunch of armed drones were stationed to basically deceive anybody doing spot inspections of the trucks. They were able to drive those trucks 5,000 kilometers into Russia, which is basically the width of the United States. That's how deep they penetrated Russia. They were able to reach targets in Siberia. And they launched these drones, which took out roughly a third, maybe as much as 40% of Russia's strategic air arsenal, nuclear arsenal. A lot of their heavy bombers were on the ground, and the drones just took them out in a neat little row, like a flying bowling ball. I mean, just blew them up. Russia suffered up to, according to initial reports, maybe as much as $7 billion worth of damage, and a good chunk of their nuclear arsenal that was perhaps on board those planes. There is a lot that took place over there, and can we see drone attacks here? Oh, you betcha it's possible. And my guess is the national security complex in the United States are looking at a multiple course of events and going, man, we still have a lot of work to do. Caroline Leavitt went back onto Fox News a few minutes after that gaggle and spoke to John Roberts and Sandra Smith and had this to say, cut 20.
The president just put out a very strong statement condemning this attack. This terrorist came into our country under the previous administration. Joe Biden's administration foolishly gave him a tourist visa and that allowed him to unlawfully remain in our country. This individual should have been deported. Instead, he was welcomed here. And now, 3 years later, after coming to this country under Joe Biden's administration, he is lighting Jewish people on fire who were simply trying to peacefully pay respect to the hostages in Israel. This absolutely is an act of targeted terrorism. The FBI and the Department of Justice are investigating it as such, and the president is going to ensure that this individual is held to the fullest extent of the law. And not just this individual, but any individual, especially illegal criminals who engage in acts of terrorism, will be held accountable under this president.
Good for Fox News to bring on the press secretary. Let me read you quickly what the president's statement was on both Truth Social and X a little bit earlier this morning. Yesterday's horrific attack in Boulder, Colorado will not be tolerated, in all caps, in the United States of America. He came in through Biden's ridiculous open border policy, which has hurt our country so badly. He must go out under Trump policy. Acts of terrorism will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. This is yet another example of why we must keep our borders secure and deport illegal anti-American radicals from our homeland. My heart goes out to the victims of this terrible tragedy and the great people of Boulder, Colorado. The estimates right now are still coming in as to the severity. There is many as, or as few as 8 people that were burned in this attack, including one that was a Holocaust survivor. The age range is between 52 and I think 88 is the upper end of the victims reported thus far. But I don't think all the details are in yet, and the varying degrees of severity of their injuries. Some are still very serious. The perpetrator, the terrorist himself, apparently had one that went off on him as well, and he suffered burns to the right side of his face. His ear is bandaged when he was captured. It's bad. coming on the heels of the Pennsylvania governor's mansion arson and the shooting of the Israeli diplomat and his fiancée on D.C., we have a problem here. The global jihad isn't just coming, it's here. And we need to be ready to do something about it. While all the anti-Semitic attacks that are going on in Colorado and all sorts of places, and the blood libel that happened over in Israel over the weekend, and what we saw in Ukraine and Russia over the weekend, there is still stuff going on right here at home as well. The big, beautiful bill is in the Senate. We just saw, if you're watching the Salem News Channel, John Thune, the leader of the Republicans, the Senate Majority Leader, seems to get exactly what is at stake if this big, beautiful bill does not get passed out of the Senate. Joining me is Olivia Beavers, the congressional reporter for the Wall Street Journal, one of the finest beat reporters on the Hill that there is. Hello, Olivia. Welcome back. How are you?
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk to you all about reconciliation, which sounds way less intense than the
no, but
national
it's
security issues listed.
but it's got to get done. And you heard what John Thune had to say. So clearly, he gets what's at stake. Do all the Republican senators, at their core, they've got their posturing, but do they get what's at stake here? Do they understand the baseline of what's at stake?
I think most Republicans understand what's at stake, but that does not mean that Thune, this will be his first time as the Senate Majority Leader watching this process go through as the GOP leader. So it's a big moment for him, but you have, just similar to the House, you have different factions that have taken issue with the House plan. So some Republicans want steeper cuts. That's Senator Ron Johnson, Mike Lee. Ron Johnson is probably the one to watch the most in that, because he's just saying he's not going to capitulate to political pressure from President Trump or his party. He wants and thinks this is his moment for steeper spending cuts. And then on the other side of that coin, you have some of the more centrists who are up for re-election who are saying they're uncomfortable with more spending cuts, like Senator Susan Collins of Maine, who will be running in 2 years for re-election. So there's sort of that tension. She's saying, watch out for Medicaid, watch out for cuts to SNAP. Someone to also watch is Senator Josh Hawley on that. And then you're getting also into the clean energy tax credits when it comes to repealing more than $500 billion from President Joe Biden's Inflation Reduction Act. So those are some of the senators to watch as we go through the next couple of weeks. They are trying to get this to the president's desk in a month's time, which is an ambitious timeline. So Speaker Johnson was able to make his timeline largely work. And now we're seeing if the Senate will be able to get it to his desk. But they also have to make sure they reconcile the House and the Senate.
So, Olivia, I live in Southern California. I'm about 2 hours away from Tijuana, Mexico. I know how they barter in Mexico. I know how they haggle, right, on everything. Tell me I'm wrong. This is how it's going to go. This is Dwayne projecting. Here's how it's going to go. The Senate is going to have some steeper cuts, a little bit more than the House did. Not much, but a little bit. They are going to claw back the SALT deduction that the House bumped up to $40,000. They'll take it to 12. They may keep it at 10. They may up it to 15 as a token, but they're going to be substantially less, and they're going to pass it because they have to pass something. They know they have to pass something. So it's going to be whatever it's going to be out of the Senate, and then it's going to go to conference. And when it's in conference, Mike Lawler in the House, who wanted to get up to 40 and can go to his constituency and say, I got my 40, but I can't control what happens over there. Not my fault, but I did my job. He's happy, right? It's going to get haggled in the middle. Conference is going to come up with 20 or somewhere in the middle. It's going to be more than what the House wanted. It's going to be less than what the Senate was going to have to consider, and they're going to come up with a happy medium in conference. That's going to get hammered out in a week, right? I mean, everybody knows what the contentious points are. They're going to put the people on both committees in the room, and they're going to say, okay, flip a coin. Where's the median point? Boom. This is it. We're done, right?
I think the way that I look at it, and I've seen it sort of work with the House when you are watching all these different factions drawing red lines, is no Republican that wants to run for reelection wants to stand in the way of President Trump's largest legislative agenda of his second term being passed. So while there was some, debate in the House before it went to the Senate, I imagine you're going to see a similar thing. And I agree with you. I do think that there's a good chance that this gets done because they don't want to be the ones to be facing his political ire and
Right.
risking their ambitions, risking them staying in office. And so maybe there'll be some groaning afterwards, but largely kind of expect them to fall in line, even if they are drawing these red lines publicly saying, oh, we won't unless.
Harry Enton on CNN released a poll a day or two ago and said, my gracious, look at this. The Republicans now own the economy by 10 points. They're killing the Democrats. In our polling, they're favorable over the Democrats by 10 points on economic issues. That's not because of what the House and the Senate did. That's because of Trump. They're looking at an oncoming train if they go against this thing. But we only have a minute left. I want to ask you about the Doge cuts because that's coming up into the House fairly soon too. What's the prospects of that? Give me about 30 seconds on that.
Well, I think you're going to see separate attempts to do the rescissions, the clawbacks of funding that Congress has already appropriated. The one that we expect to even be as soon as this week is one to address funding for NPR, PBS, and USAID. And then I think the plan is to come with more rescissions packages, another rescission package after the reconciliation bill is done, so that they can wait for this kind of big thing to get finished and then get the start on that process separately. So the one possibly coming this week is about $10 billion. So they're definitely looking to do more. And Doge's cut, depending on what analysts say, inflated numbers
Olivia,
175.
We're out of time. Follow Olivia online as I do at Olivia_Beavers on X. And Olivia, keep putting out more content on X. I'm counting on it. So is the rest of the country. On Mondays and Fridays, both weeks, while Hugh's on his vacation, I promise you're going to at least hear decent bumper music. Unlike tomorrow when Kurt Schlichter's here. Lord only knows what he's going to play. He's out there listening, and I'm sure he will respond in kind tomorrow. But anyway, welcome back. Just because Hugh's away, we're still doing the campaign along with all of our colleagues across the network, TV and radio, Salem News Channel and Salem Radio Network, for our friends at Angel Tree. Every year about this time, we come to you hat in hand to make a difference in a child's life that are going through all sorts of real-world struggles because of no fault of their own. Their parents are incarcerated, one or both of them are incarcerated, and they just are looking for a way to be a kid for a little bit of time, and that's where Angel Tree comes in. They provide the ability to take these kids and minister to them, put them in a camp environment for a week, and give them the experience that a lot of kids get and just kind of take for granted. Now, we tell you about this just as a concept. We tell you about this as in talking points, but sometimes it works better if you actually hear the people that run these camps and what it really means to these kids. In just outside Oklahoma City, there is a camp that's run by a couple named Brian and Jamie, and here's what Jamie had to say.
I believe God has an amazing heart for young ones, and we all have to come to God with childlike faith. And so if we can get these campers to camp when they're young and when they're open, and especially these campers who may be coming from hard places with special wounds and special challenges, it can put them on a life-altering path. You could be breaking generational incarceration and helping set their entire family on a different trajectory by reaching the child.
You heard last week when he was talking about this and him being gone for a couple weeks, you heard his radio shtick about how the guest host can never outperform the main host when it comes to these types of campaigns that we all care about. And I don't know if that's true or not. All I know is this camp makes a difference in kids' lives, and you can help. All you have to do is go to the top of HughHewitt.com. There is a banner that will load that says make a difference in the lives of prisoners, children. The banner's at the top of the page. Just click that banner, make the best donation you can. Or if you want to do it the old-fashioned way, you can call 888-206-2764. That's 888-206-2764. But it's easier just to go to the top of HughHewitt.com and click on that Angel Tree banner at the top of the page. We would appreciate it, and I know the kids would appreciate it. And you know you can make a difference. Speaking of making a difference, let's go back and play a clip of Scott Bessent. The Treasury Secretary was on Face the Nation with Margaret Brennan. She's pushing back at how all this inflation and tariff stuff is going to happen, and this is going to happen if you pass this big beautiful bill. And Scott Bessent just called her on it. Number 4.
When you were last here in March, we were trying to gauge what the impact of the standoff with China and with the tariffs on the rest of the world would do for American consumers here at home. At that time, you told us you were going to appoint an affordability czar and council to figure out 5, you said, or 8 areas where there will be some, pain for working class Americans. Where are you anticipating price increases?
Well, thus far, we wanted to make sure that there aren't price increases, Margaret, and thus far there have been no price increases. Everything has been alarmist. That the inflation numbers are actually dropping. We saw the first drop of inflation in 4 years. The inflation numbers last week, they were very pro-consumer.
Right. But you listen to earnings calls just like we do. Mm-hmm. You know what Walmart's saying, what Best Buy's saying, and what Target are saying.
But Margaret, I also know what Home Depot and Amazon are saying. I know what the South China Morning Post wrote within the past 24 hours, that 65% of the tariffs will likely be eaten by the Chinese producers.
Straight into my veins. Scott Bessent is not accepting the narrative of resistance media. They lied to you about Joe Biden and his fitness. They lied to you about him for 4 years. They lied to you about Russiagate. They lied to you about Hunter Biden's laptop. They lied to you about Donald Trump. They lied to you all along the way, and now they're trying to tell you that, well, if you do this big beautiful bill, it's going to create inflation. It's going to cause this. But you said it was going to happen with the tariffs, and it didn't happen. When are we going to start to understand that the mainstream media, as we know it, is not our friend and doesn't tell us the truth? They certainly didn't tell us the truth about what happened over in Gaza over the weekend at that refugee camp. I want to let you know about what also happened over the weekend. We talked about, of course, what happened in Boulder, the horrific firebombing of a crowd of Jews that were just walking around trying to draw attention and standing in solidarity, walking in solidarity with the hostages that are still being held in the tunnels underneath Gaza by Hamas, that can't walk around freely, right? So that's going on. And an Egyptian national who is here illegally after overstaying a visa that Joe Biden's administration gave him said free Palestine and threw a bunch of Molotov cocktails, threw at least a couple, and had 14 others he wanted to use. Could have been way worse than what it was. That's just the global jihad coming here to Boulder. There was also an event that happened over the last week put together by the Trump administration and the State of Israel. The special envoy, Steve Witkoff, and the Trump administration, along with Bibi Netanyahu's government, figured out a way to finally get some relief, food and essentials to the Palestinians that need it, and do it in a way that bypasses Hamas so that all the aid going in doesn't just go to the terrorists, right? The way that this thing was set up was the most secure possible way to get food from point A to point B, the people that need it the most. And I know there's a lot of people out there that say, look, at this point, there's nothing salvageable in Gaza. And I understand that viewpoint. Believe me, I understand that viewpoint. But if your goal is to get from point A to point B, this was the best way to do it. And there was a tremendous outflow, and there was a lot of thanks on behalf of Palestinians of both Israel and the Americans for putting this together. Now, over the weekend, the Gaza Department of Health, which has been nothing but a propaganda arm of Hamas and the terrorists, and by extension, the state of Iran, they put out this story, this blood libel, that the IDF used tanks, used soldiers, and just shot into the crowd and killed 26 people in cold blood that were just trying to get relief. Now, there was no evidence of that. It was just simply a propaganda dropped by Hamas through the Gaza Department of Health. The New York Times ran a story, more than 20 killed near aid distribution site in Gaza, Palestinian health officials say. CNN runs a story. At least 26 Palestinians killed after Israeli forces opened fire near Gaza aid distribution center, health workers say. BBC. 26 dead after Israeli tanks opened fire near Gaza aid center, rescuers say. Here's the problem. It didn't happen. It's not true. There's no evidence of it. The IDF said it didn't happen. There was some shooting that happened on the other side of the crowd as people were crowding. There was some masked gunmen that were probably Hamas infiltrators that started to shoot people that were trying to get relief because they didn't want that. But it wasn't the IDF that was doing it. It wasn't tanks. It certainly wasn't the soldiers. And they actually found security cam footage, date stamped, time stamped for that period in question when this atrocity allegedly was to have happened. And the video shows food being transferred between the Israelis and the Americans and the Palestinians. It was a big throng of people. There wasn't any shooting going on. It just did not happen. CNN kept that story up all afternoon. They finally revised the story, their revision. At least 31 Palestinians were killed amid chaotic scenes near an aid site run by a U.S.-backed private foundation in Gaza, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry. CNN cannot independently verify who was responsible for the deaths. The health ministry blamed the Israeli military. The IDF denied firing on civilians, calling such accusations false reports. CNN actually ran a headline a little bit earlier dealing with the Boulder story. A man reportedly set people on fire in Boulder, Colorado, leaving multiple injuries. The city's police chief said as people gathered for a, quote, air quote, peaceful, end quote, pro-Israeli demonstration. They're waiting and waiting and waiting because they don't want to have to report the fact that a jihadi firebombed a bunch of Jews in Boulder, Colorado in broad daylight. They don't want to report that. We want to wait. But if it's possibly a Jewish attack on Muslims, oh yeah, give us more of that. Dr. Michael Oren, we did find him during the break. He'll join us at the top of the hour, which is better because it's a little longer segment anyway. And he'll update us on that blood libel that American media just repeated the second it was issued by Hamas, basically, because they wanted it to be true. There's no other explanation. Media is going through as bad of a phase as you can possibly imagine. How bad is... In fact, I got a piece over at hotair.com that's running right now. What's the excuse this time, media? We're being told after the Jake Tapper book got released, Original Sin, along with his co-author Alex Thompson, that it's not media's fault. They were just lied to. They were lied to by the Biden team. All the Democrats lied to him. Golly gee, it's not our fault that we didn't report on it. We had no idea. It's not an ideological bias on our part at all. No, it's just we got lied to. Okay, so what's the excuse this time? Hamas has lied to you every single time, and you ran with it. The instance out of Boulder, Colorado, the terrorist attack out of Boulder, Ken Delanian, who is a national security reporter for NBC News, puts out on X this morning after 8 Jews were firebombed by an anti-Semite that's here illegally. It's worth noting that flamethrowers are legal and commercially available for sale. Elon Musk's company even sold some several years ago. So somehow he took an illegal alien who's an anti-Semitic jihadist who literally firebombed a crowd of Jews. Somehow that's Elon Musk's fault. And we have to turn this into an anti-Trump and anti-Musk thing. And it gets even better. Jamie Raskin, former congressman, or current congressman, formerly on the Trump impeachment committee, was on MSNBC and said this, cut 17.
Across the country, we are still in the midst of a gun violence epidemic. So we need to be acting.
Stop. Just shut up. Honestly, for the love of God, just shut up. A terrorist firebombed through Molotov cocktails at Jews in Boulder, and you're talking about gun violence. Just shut up. If you can't say anything that's even remotely coherent and worthwhile for the national discussion, then shut up, please. Do yourself a favor. Speaking of do yourself a favor, stick around for the top of the hour, because Dr. Michael Oren has, I've just been informed, wrote a piece that's going to appear in the Free Press about this very blood libel that I was talking about the last segment, and what to think about it, and the global jihad that's coming around. Plus, we got Noah Rothman coming up talking about the Operation Spiderweb that took place, which was a game changer in military strategy. Joined by our regular weekly guests, including Dr. Michael Oren, former Israeli ambassador to the U.S., Wilson Center senior fellow, and probably no more appropriate guest to have on today, as we are dealing with a bunch of anti-Semitism going on around the world, most recently in Boulder, Colorado, but also, as I was mentioning in the last hour, there was a libel again by the Gaza Department of Health that is nothing but a propaganda arm of Hamas, accusing the IDF of gunning down, using tanks to gun down 26, maybe as many as 30 plus people looking for aid. It just didn't happen. It's not true. And I'm joined by Michael Oren now. Hello, Dr. Oren. Good to have you here. I understand you have a piece now in the Free Press addressing this non-story that American media bought hook, line, and sinker again.
Well, not in the Free Press yet, Dwayne. It's the middle of the night there, but we'll see. But thank you. Good to be with you. And you're absolutely right. Let's put the cards on the table, Dwayne. You have CNN, New York Times, MSNBC, all the so-called
Washington Post,
middle-of-the-road mainstream media, which day after day, if not hour after hour, portrays the Jewish state as a state of bloodthirsty, children massacring demons. And that comes right out of the Middle Ages, as you know. It is a blood libel. And there's no attempt to explain Israel's actions in Gaza as if maybe they could possibly be rational, that maybe a state doesn't want to see Hamas survive and reconquer the Gaza Strip and mount the next October 7th and give an immense victory to Islamicists throughout the Western world. Maybe that could be the case. When was the last time you heard any of these mainstream medias explore Israel's actual rational reasons behind this? Not being a bloodthirsty, children massacring, demoniac state. When was the last time you heard that maybe Hamas, not Israel, bears 99% of the responsibility for the violence in Gaza and the suffering of the Palestinian people? When was the last time you heard that? Now, that type of atmosphere percolates. And it creates a situation where it's, open season on the Jews. Why wouldn't you want to kill or maim these satanic Jews who are causing such suffering to innocent people in the world? Why wouldn't you? So the media lies, and the media lies over and over again, and Jews die. And today was a case in point. Here you had the CNN throughout the entire day, Dwayne, never took this headline down.
I know. I wrote a column on it too.
Yeah, IDF shoots 26. The Palestinians jacked up to 31 innocent Palestinians waiting to get aid. The only problem is, as you said, it never happened. Moreover, the IDF published videos of Palestinian gunning these people down. No mention it on CNN. No mention it on New York Times. Only sort of an afterthought saying, oh, by the way, the IDF says it never happened. And if that is not a blood libel, I mean, if that is not like, by definition, a blood libel, I don't know what it is. And any of these media outlets would take a second, engage in type of introspection, and ask the question, how we've contributed materially to creating a situation where Jews are no longer safe in the United States.
Now, Michael, the juxtaposition to me is so striking. Your example is exactly right. As of last night, the New York Times, you actually had to do a search to be able to find their story of what happened in Boulder, Colorado, their write-up of the terrorist attack in Boulder, Colorado, where an Egyptian national shouted "Free Palestine" and threw Molotov cocktails into a crowd of Jews doing a weekly march in a park to remember the hostages being held by Hamas. So he decides he wants to kill Jews. He had as many as 14 Molotov cocktails until he accidentally lit himself on fire. So you've got that going on. You had to do a search on New York Times to find that story, but as you referred to it, the blood libel that didn't happen was still on the front page, unredacted, uncorrected. It's astounding, Michael. Now, are there anti-Semitic voices on the right, on the far right? Of course there are, but they're not mainstream within the party. In the Democratic Party right now, they're playing footsies with this all over the place, and media is going along with it. I don't understand why, Michael.
Well, I think that the answers lie deep in Western consciousness. I've been involved in interministerial committees on our what's called public diplomacy for many years, and I always have some bad news for people in these committees and saying, listen, folks, we got to remember we're the Jewish state, and 95% of the bad press we're dealing with have anti-Semitic overtones or undertones that go back hundreds and hundreds of years. Jews kill children. Jews are vengeful. We can't just defend ourselves. We have to be somehow exacting revenge. And I encounter this all the time in my interactions with the media. And so we're up against 2,500 years of anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism predates Christianity by a half a millennium. So it's up against a lot. But let me give you the most obvious one. Every day we hear about 53 or 54,000 Palestinians killed by Israel. Every day. And I've said this many times on this program, but it just bears being said again. That 54,000 comes from the Gaza health authorities. Nobody knows who they are. No one can mention a name. They'll say, well, the UN backs that up. Yeah, but the UN also, the UN quotes the Gaza health authorities, and the Gaza health authorities quotes the UN. So it's a loop of lies.
Right.
And you don't deduct the 22,000 terrorists that Israel has killed, and we know we've killed the 22,000. It doesn't get the thousands of Palestinians who have been killed by other Palestinians, such as these 26 or 31 who were killed today. And it doesn't include the 8,000 Palestinians who, out of a population of 2.2 million, out of the course of 19 months, die of natural causes. And you deduct all of that from the 53 or 54,000, you're going to get a 1-to-1 combatant to civilian fatality ratio, which no army in modern history has even come close to replicating. Come close. When was the last time you saw that argument on the front page of the New York Times? When was the last time you saw that fact, or heard that fact, or saw that fact about CNN? And that is, but the 53,000 is not just a lie; it's an anti-Semitic lie, because it is predicated on the belief that Jews kill children. And by the way, there's a very interesting study from a wonderful professor at the University of Pennsylvania, Adi Wyman, who will prove to you that statistically, Hamas's fatality statistics are statistically impossible.
Okay. I, yeah. Well, yeah. What does that say about our media, and what does that say about the point you're making? Ken Delanian is a reporter for NBC News, national security reporter. Put this up on X today, a day after the terrorist attack in Boulder, Colorado. Worth noting that flamethrowers are legal and commercially available for sale. Elon Musk's company even sold some several years ago. Michael, I don't even know what you do with that.
I don't know what to do with that. Forget it. It's just it's despicable. It's horrible. It's distressing. And
last question.
Be done? This is what I'm going on the Israeli media all the time. They're asking me what's to be done, and I don't have I don't have that rabbit to pull out of the hat to say what's to be done. Other than we have to increasingly be vigilant, and it's about time we hold the media responsible and that they engage in some serious introspection. How have they contributed to the sense that they lie and media die and Jews die?
Yeah, that's good words. Dr. Michael Oren, you can follow him on Twitter /X at Dr. Michael Oren. You follow him at the Wilson Center, and you can follow him every week here on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Thank you, Dr. Oren. Joined by a good friend of ours, Noah Rothman of National Review, senior political writer there. And Noah, I was just reading during the break, Where Are the Dot Connectors? A great column I commend to you over at National Review. Looking at the events out of Boulder, looking at the events of Pennsylvania a month or two ago, and what happened, of course, on the streets of D.C., where an Israeli diplomat and his fiancée were murdered in cold blood by an anti-Semitic terrorist. Noah, welcome. Good to have you here. I agree with your assessment that you don't really have to look too far to see where all this violence is coming from and what the undercurrent is. But yet we don't have a media that's got any intellectual curiosity to get to the bottom of it outside of people like you.
No, it's really unfortunate. I've spent the better part of 2025 writing about left-wing violence as the most urgent and acute of the crises we're facing today among the presented by the fringes of American political thought. And which is not to say that the left is uniquely capable of producing violent individuals. I don't think it is. What is unique is that most of society's institutions, a lot of our revered institutions, when it comes to government, journalism, politics, academia, are forever on the lookout for right-wing violence. To an extent that they should be, perhaps, but to the exclusion, unfortunately, of the left-wing violence that somehow evades their vigilance. All of society's engines are geared towards that pursuit, and they tend to miss it when it's of their own side, and if it is of their own side, they often excuse it or explain it away. So it is left to us to identify these trends, and they are trends, and it's not hard to establish them. First and foremost, we have 3 terroristic anti-Semitic incidents in as many months: the firebombing of Josh Shapiro's home, the murder of these 2 individuals outside an Israeli embassy event in Washington, D.C., and now this. And we
you can even include not to interrupt, but you can even include Hassan Choker out of Dearborn, Michigan, who got sentenced for trying to basically shoot up and destroy a synagogue and preschool in Michigan a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Precisely. And it's not as though the milieu in which we're all steeped in is unavailable to us. We see it. We hear it. We see the slogans. We've experienced over the last year and a half the efforts to make American life in U.S. cities, metropolitan areas, and campuses intolerable. We see the vandalism. We see the violence. We see the harassment. We see the national scandal that has erupted as a result of it. It's not like this is hidden. This is a national phenomenon of which we're all aware of, and it's manifesting among the fringes in violence. It's the sort of thing that we would have a national conversation about if it was of the right, as we should, but we're not having it because the left, A, doesn't see it, and when they do see it, they have a tendency to excuse and explain it away.
You see, I am really, I'm in media, you're in media, and I am absolutely astonished and appalled at how our craft, our field is acting. At the New York Times, as of last night, you had to do a search to find a write-up on the New York Times about the terrorist attack in Boulder, where crowd of Jews trying to walk in solidarity with the hostages still being held in Hamas were firebombed by an Egyptian national that overstayed a visa here illegally. He shouted "Free Palestine" and threw two Molotov cocktails.
All of those things really attack the fundaments of the New York Times worldview. So you really don't want to put them in the same sentence.
Sure does. But when that's going on, at the same time you're trying to find that story on the New York Times website, on the front page, unredacted, is this, Michael Oren called it a blood libel, by the Gaza Health Ministry accusing the IDF tanks and soldiers of shooting into a Palestinian aid crowd, killing 20-some-odd people. It didn't happen, Noah, but the New York Times still ran with it. So if they're going to run with that kind of stuff, that it's easily disproved and easily debunked, but they take the anti-Israel side every chance possible. And you've got nuts out there hearing stories that Israel just shot 26 people, kids in a crowd trying to get food. Why, they're awful. I have to do something. They're inciting this, Noah.
Yeah, and obviously violence is not reflective of most of these movements, but there are violent individuals who are,
of course,
susceptible to suggestion, particularly when you have institutions in high respect, high esteem, and politicians and figures to whom these people look up to, intimating that this is the sort of thing they would look on fondly. That's a seductive notion to somebody who thinks it can be the instrument of history. We should all be more aware of our possible roles in agitating these individuals who are susceptible to agitation. That being said, I've seen a lot of commentary today, not just from Democrats and the press, but also from the Trump administration that is zooming in on the immigration angle, that this guy overstayed his visa, is an asylum seeker, shouldn't have gone through the process, abused the process. That's all true. I think this really does demonstrate the degree to which Republicans and conservatives who said the asylum system was broken and subject to abuse were right. It's not like that's news. But it would be a mistake to say that this is a foreign situation, that this is imposed on us from abroad, that all these institutions that are blood libeling the state of Israel and that are picked up on the media, and the fact that they're denied by the IDF or the charity organization that's operating these places, or the 14,000 babies lie, all this stuff is being promulgated by places like the United Nations. These are respectable institutions, right? But it is not a foreign issue. Allegedly, of course, but you can be fooled if you're a journalist and you say, well, it's coming from the United Nations. I'll defer to them. You shouldn't.
Sure.
But this is not a foreign situation. This is not something that's imposed on us from abroad anymore. It is here. It is homegrown. 2 of those 3 incidences that we experienced in the last as many months have come from individuals who were receptive to propaganda from abroad, but they are Americans. They're executing this mission in solidarity with violent Palestinian nationalism abroad. The Intifada has come home, and it would be a mistake for us to believe that we could interdict it abroad. It needs to be interdicted domestically as well. This is partly a law enforcement problem. It is also a counterterrorism issue. And as a counterterrorism issue, we can go after the ideology.
Yeah, I agree with that entirely. The facts in the Boulder case certainly do include what the Trump administration is saying here, but the problem is much deeper rooted than that, and it requires a much deeper conversation about it. I only have about a minute left, or maybe even less. What do you make of the operation in Spiderweb, Operation Spiderweb between Ukraine and Russia? Have you seen anything like that before? Has warfare changed?
No one has. And yeah, I mean, this is the sort of thing that Ukraine has been doing, not nearly close to this scale. And the degree of coordination and expertise and infiltrating deep inside the Russian Federation in wartime and then executing this operation. It strikes me as very similar to the Israeli Pagers operation.
Absolutely.
It was extremely discreet. It demonstrated the moral distinction between these adversaries, whereas Russia is bombing civilian population centers indiscriminately. This is about as discreet an attack on martial military units, assets, limited military value as you can get. It was an incredibly successful attack, very, very daring, very bold, impressive, but also ethical in a way that it demonstrates the degree to which our partners abroad are better, just better than our adversaries.
Absolutely. Noah Rothman of National Review, thank you very much. You can read him online at Noah C. Rothman, or, of course, over at National Review. I want to talk to you about something personal, which is I was able to celebrate my 6th anniversary last week. And my adorable wife, Joy, and I celebrated dinner at home. And that consisted of me cooking 4-inch tall fillets on my Best Hot Grill. Rhett Rasmussen and his wife Irene, great American company, Solaire Grills. We made arrangements to be able to get their large size 2 infrared burner grill, and this thing is just a magnificent machine in the backyard. The surface gets hotter than Pamela Brown's face on CNN when she's interviewing Stephen Miller. I mean, it gets hot very fast, and it just cooked the best steaks I've ever had in my life. And I need those steaks because I'm on my PhD weight loss maintenance plan, and you need a lot of protein on that. I'll get to that in just a second. But you too can get the great Best Hot Grill by going to besthotgrills.com. Made in America. They've got everything from a travel size single burner to the full size with the side panels, and it's just a great machine. Check out all the details at besthotgrills.com. You can also get their new fireplaces, fireballs, gas logs. They've got all sorts of great stuff over at besthotgrills.com. You should check it out. Now, I mentioned the steaks. The perfect My PhD weight loss dinner is fillets, and you take some zucchini and you cut it into like squares, rectangles, and you put a little garlic on it, a little lemon pepper actually, and just a pat of butter, just a little bit it's just the best thing in the world. Stick it on top of the grill while the steaks are going. That's the kind of stuff you learn when you sign on to the myphdweightloss.com plan. You can lose whatever amount of weight that you want to lose. They will craft a plan that works for your schedule, your dietary requirements, and your taste, and come up with a way to get you where you need to go and provide the accountability. Go to myphdweightloss.com or call 864-644-1900. That's 864-644-1900. Worked for me. I lost 50 pounds about 3 years ago. And I didn't think I could lose that much, but I did. You can too. And once you get there, they transition to a maintenance mode so you can learn all the tricks to be able to kind of keep within a range. myphdweightloss.com and besthotgrill.com. It's the perfect 1-2 advertiser punch in all of radiodom, as far as I'm concerned. When we come back from the break, we're going to be joined by Vic Mattis, but I just want to give you just a taste for kind of how crazy media is covering this. Let's play a little Andrew McCabe, he who got fired basically from the FBI or forced out because he lied about Trump and Hillary Clinton and got caught up in all that Russiagate nonsense. Here's Andrew McCabe reacting to the Colorado story in Boulder, the terrorist attack. Cut 3.
I think that the press conference that we saw, one thing was abundantly clear, is the local authorities, and I'm not sure we got the name of that person who was speaking. He seems to be a chief or somebody in charge there.
Same, yes.
Yeah, he is really being very, very careful, and I think that's the right approach at this point. They don't have a clear idea that they're willing to communicate to the rest of the world yet of even exactly what happened, who was there, how they were attacked with fire, and what the purpose or the motive of that attack might have been. So he was very, very clear to say that they're not drawing any conclusions about terrorism or anything else at this point. They're trying to figure out who they have in custody and what that person might have done and who he...
Okay, let's stop. I can't take this guy either. He got blown out for basically perpetrating a fraud on the American people, right? He lied to you. And now his biggest complaint is that the FBI, under Kash Patel, called this a targeted terror attack. which of course it was. But it's way too soon. It's way reckless for the FBI to decide what this guy's motivations were. Well, the cell phone capturing him screaming "Free Palestine" as his ears on fire from the third Molotov he wasn't able to release. Maybe that might be the first clue of what his motivation could be, Andrew. Just honestly, Resistance Media, I know you think you're speaking to your base. You're just making an ass out of yourself. Joined by one of our favorite people out there, and that is Vic Mattis of the Getting Hammered podcast he does with Mary Catherine Ham every week. And he's also the weekend editor of the Washington Free Beacon. And there is a piece that appeared today by Zach Kessel. It's entitled, "Washington Post cited Hamas to allege without evidence that Israel gunned down Gazans at aid site." Then it changed the story without a correction. Vic Mattis, what in the world is wrong with the media, and how can you maintain the illusion, if you're media, that you're not biased when time after time again, when you especially look at something regarding the state of Israel, either over there or here in a domestic terrorist attack, their bias is just over the top? I mean, why don't you set people up for what happened here?
Yeah, that's right, Dwayne. We had that horrible incident that happened supposedly on Saturday. It's very unclear where the violence took place. This is about the food distribution in Gaza, where an American and Israeli company, a foundation, they're trying to help feed Gazans, not Hamas, but Gazans. And in the past, remember, the United Nations said that they've been very unsuccessful in getting those trucks to the right people. And even places, organizations like Amnesty International say that, there's violence being inflicted by Hamas on Gazans, and you don't see a lot of that. So suddenly there was gunshots fired. The Israelis said that they shot warning shots against, raiders, people who are going to steal the food. And it didn't happen at the distribution site. But somehow sources tell the mainstream media and places like the Washington Post and elsewhere that these are Israelis who are committing this horrible crime. And the headline that appeared in that great piece, as you mentioned, from Zach Kessel, was Israeli troops kill over 30 near U.S. aid site in Gaza, health officials say. And of course,
but it's not sources. It's not sources. It's one source. It's the Gaza Department Ministry of Health, which is Hamas. Vic, it's just it's propaganda, and they bought it hook, line, and sinker.
That's right. And you also have to keep in mind, Dwayne, that a lot of these correspondents and reporters on the ground that are working with the media, particularly at the Post, they're former Al Jazeera correspondents. So, of course, they have an angle, and that angle is going to be anti-Zionist. And so there needs to be a better job at vetting this. So, of course, when it comes out, hey, wait a minute, it's unclear that Israel actually committed these crimes and whether or not anything happened in the first place, then they very quietly at the Post changed the headline to something more anodyne, something obviously in the passive voice, as something happened to these people. There's no editor's note and there's no apology. So as a result, you have no accountability. But that's, again, it was a banner weekend for the mainstream media. It wasn't just at the Post. CNN had their panel with Andrew McCabe of the FBI, former FBI fame.
I just played it. I just played the cut. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. Excoriating Trump when this, and saying that it was very reckless for them to do that. And it was ridiculous.
You saw, of course, that, it's not even just this story, and as vile as this story is, there's another headline I want to read to you from the Washington Post. This is from the 31st, so this was, Saturday, by Mary Beth Sheridan. The mysterious drop in fentanyl seizures on the U.S.-Mexico border, the reasons behind it are behind the decrease in fentanyl seizures in the U.S. and along the Mexican-U.S. border are complex. And it's this, 1,000-word, 1,200-word essay of all the reasons why she can point to as to what might explain why there's not as much fentanyl coming into the country. And you'll be shocked to learn that Trump's policies aren't front and center as to why. It's the poor Sinaloa cartel having economic issues. There's shortages of ingredients coming into the country, but no reason, no rationale for why that might be the case, Vic Mattis. What is wrong with these people?
It goes all the way back, Dwayne, to like liberal columnists. You remember this, writing about that, crime is down, but sadly, there's a larger prison population. I don't know what the correlation is.
Yes.
So it's nothing new. They have a very sort of firm belief on how what the narrative is, and they cannot let reality get in the way of that narrative. So that this is another thing where they say it's very complex, it's mysterious. The amount of fentanyl coming in is down, but also we have this problem where Donald Trump is going after all these illegals. So those are two separate, unrelated stories in their minds. And again, it's who they believe and who they don't want to believe. So if you want to go back to the story of what happened in the Middle East and what happened in Boulder, you have a terror attack at home, and they say, hey, let's not jump to conclusions. Something happens in Israel. Oh, we got to take Hamas's word. We don't know the story, but let's run with it. So sadly, this is nothing new. It's not a surprise, but I do hope a lot of Americans are waking up to this.
I hope so too. I've been reading this clip just because it's just so mind-boggling. Ken Delanian over at NBC News, national security reporter for NBC. Here's his tweet from this morning. It's worth noting that flamethrowers are legal and commercially available for sale. Elon Musk's company even sold some several years ago, and puts a link to the company that Musk plugged.
It's absolutely brilliant how he's able to tie Elon Musk to this. It's his fault. It's what happened in Boulder, which we're not sure of, but if it's bad, it's going to be Elon's fault and probably Trump. This is like going again. It's like when, the focus is on guns whenever there's a terrible shooting.
Jamie Raskin pulled that. Jamie Raskin was on MSNBC, and he was there with all the B-roll of what's going on in Boulder in the backdrop. That's why they booked him, because he's a Jewish congressman that's a lefty. Yeah. And he starts talking about, well, the problem here is clearly gun control, because apparently the guns, I don't know how they fit within the Molotov cocktail, but they have to somehow, Vic.
Yeah, that's really the issue here is, access to these weapons, whether or not they're put together, at home or not. It really has nothing to do with the shouts for intifada revolution. And there's one solution in globalizing intifada. I'm sure that has nothing to do with the actions of this person. They've normalized the violence.
Yes, that's actually the sad reality. They've normalized the violence. Yeah. Vic, great job as always, keeping Mary Catherine in line. We will look forward to the next edition of Getting Hammered, and what comes out of the Free Beacon, especially on weekends when Vic runs the place. Coming up next hour, Jim Talent, former senator from Missouri, will be along, and we are going to focus almost exclusively on the very just brazen daring attack by Ukraine deep into Russia, wiping out about a third of their air fleet and a lot of their nuclear air-based arsenal, which is just a terrific move as far as if you're trying to disable your enemy, that's about as strategic a way to do so. And it as Noah Rothman said, it very much harkens back to the pager operation by the Israelis a year and a half ago. We will get into that, and more importantly, the national security concerns that every country in the world, including us, are having to recalibrate, thinking that you could have a cargo container somewhere with a false top on it, and a bunch of drones could come out and attack an air base that we have or a naval base before we know what hit us. It's got to make a bunch of people rethink things. It certainly made the market rethink things a little bit. Let's do the market report while we have time here. The market report, of course, is brought to us by AmericanFederal.com. 800-221-7694. Nick Grovich and his team are always standing by, So you can give them a call and say, hey, you know, this event's going on. What do you think is going to happen? Is this going to lead to inflation? Is this going to lead to market uncertainty? You know, Russia's now talking about raising their nuclear posture in response in regards to the way they may conduct the war against Ukraine. There's all sorts of stuff that's on the horizon that are troubling. The market doesn't seem to have reacted too badly to what happened over the weekend. The Dow, S&P, NASDAQ are all up a little bit, ranging between about 1/10 of a point and 2/3 of a point, or percent, actually. They seem to be able to be okay, and the gold price, though, jumped a bunch. It went up about $90 from yesterday. Is this a time for you to buy into gold? You think it's going to go up a lot higher? Maybe a call to Nick would be appropriate. 800-221-7694. Also, before we close out the hour, I want to remind you that our campaign, with all this uncertainty and all this chaos and all the lies from the media, look, you're mad about it, you're frustrated about it, you can't do anything about it. One thing you can do is help change a kid's life. You can change at least one kid's life. You can make a difference. You can set them on a path that they would otherwise not be on by helping our Angel Tree program. Go to the top of the Hugh Hewitt website, hughhewitt.com. There's an Angel Tree banner. Click on that banner. $200 takes a kid whose parents are incarcerated and they don't have a lot of hope. They don't have a lot of resources, and it sends them to summer camp and gives them a shot, a way forward, a different life for at least a week in ministry. 888-207-2764, 888-206-2764, or go to hughhewitt.com. We've been talking a lot about the terrorist attack in Boulder, Colorado. A press conference just concluded with the special agent in charge, FBI, and there's been some revisions upwards of what it's not really surprising. The number of victims that were burned in the Molotov cocktail attack has risen to 12 after 4 additional victims were identified, the DA in this press conference said. The suspect is now facing 16 accounts of attempted suspect. The terrorist is facing 16 counts of attempted murder in the first degree, which would face a maximum of 384 years in prison. They recovered a box that contained a total, including the 2 that he actually was able to use, 16 unused Molotov cocktails were recovered by law enforcement. So he had intended to do a lot more damage than he was able to do. There but the grace of God and his own incompetence saved a bunch of lives there, actually. Bill Malugin of Fox News, who since the story happened has owned this story far better than anybody else in media has this breaking news. New details on the Colorado terror attack as feds charge him with a federal hate crime. According to federal court filings obtained by Fox News, Egyptian illegal alien Mohammed Soliman admitted in an interview that he wants to kill all, quote, Zionist, end quote, people, and had been planning the attack for a year, and that he would conduct the attack again if he could. He allegedly told investigators that he waited to carry out the attack until his daughter graduated high school, and that he specifically targeted the Zionist group in Boulder after learning about them from an online search. It was premeditated, as he allegedly admitted he knew they would gather on Sunday at 1 p.m. He arrived and waited for him. Additionally, investigators found a black container with 14 more Molotov cocktails near the spot he was arrested in. Inside the vehicle, investigators found paperwork with the words Israel, Palestine, and USAID on it. This man was admitted into the country by way of a tourist visa during the Biden administration. He overstayed, filed an asylum request, and was granted work authorization by the Biden administration, which expired at the end of March of this year, so he'd overstayed that as well. Watch that space, because CNN and MSNBC are going to do the quiet, slow fade away of that as quickly as humanly possible, because it does not fit their narrative. Speaking of narrative, on the weekend shows, Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, was on Meet the Press with Kristen Welker. And Kristen, God love her, she's got her narrative, and it's pretty much not what you and I have as in regards to the big, beautiful bill, in regards to wanting these tax cuts to be permanent. No, she has the talking points, and the talking points are not coming from the Republicans. They're not coming from the White House. Her talking points are coming from one direction and one direction only. Let's march our way through Mike Johnson reacting to Kristen Welker. Let's play cut number 5.
By the American people, and they're going to feel the effects of that soon.
And Mr. Speaker, just to be clear, I mean, this is not a Democratic talking point. I'm asking about something that President Trump himself had floated the idea of. It is estimated that if the bill becomes law, the top 10% of households would see an increase in resources, but the bottom 10% would see a decrease in resources. Why are you comfortable?
No, that's simply not. I'm not comfortable with that. It is not true. Look at the actual facts of the tax cuts that we're extending. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, again, from 2017, the people that benefited most from that were the lowest income Americans. It was households that made between $20,000 and $30,000 a year annually. They had the biggest benefit from the TCJA. Also, the people that make $40,000 or less had their best tax benefits in over 40 years. Yeah. Go back and look at the statistics. So what we're doing right now is, by making all those tax cuts permanent, we're preventing the largest tax increase in U.S. history. Kristen, if we don't get this bill passed, every American is going to receive the largest tax increase in the history of our country at the end of this year when the TCJA expires. Don't forget that. We have to extend it, and this is the vehicle to do it.
Bottom line, Mr. Speaker, you all had set a July 4th deadline to get all of this passed. Are you confident you can meet that?
I think he is pretty confident, and honestly, it should. If it takes the Senate 2 weeks to process this, which is expected, and then they vote on it, it goes to conference committee, that's another week to 10 days. You're looking at the end of June, probably. July 4th break is about right. Donald Trump's going to sign it. That seems to be the target. More Mike Johnson fighting back against the Democratic talking points offered by Kristen Welker, cut number 6.
President Trump had actually at one point raised the idea of letting the tax rate on the wealthiest people go back to that 2017 rate. The House bill, though, does make the lower rate permanent. So, Mr. Speaker, why do millionaires need to keep that tax cut?
That's a Democrat talking point. You know, this is not giving tax cuts to millionaires. It's the opposite. The people in the tax bracket that you're referring to, many of them are small business owners. They are the people that provide the jobs in every community in America. They use pass-through taxation, and we don't get in the weeds. We don't have time to get into the complications of it. We are the party that reduces taxes for all Americans. And I'm telling you, the One Big Beautiful Bill is geared for hardworking Americans. The biggest beneficiaries of this will be low and middle income Americans. That's what we did in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. That's what we'll do again by extending those tax cuts in perpetuity and making them permanent. That was a major promise of the president on the campaign trail. It's a major promise of ours, and we were going to fulfill it.
One of the other talking points from the Democrats on the Big Beautiful Bill is that it slashes Medicaid. It's going to cut people off of Medicaid, and you can't convince them otherwise. You can't tell them that it's going to be just removing illegal aliens from accessing Medicaid, which it does. No, it's going to cut grandma off. It's going to cut all the poor people off. It's going to cut all the people that are just barely hanging on. Mike Johnson's not putting up with it, and he's pushing back at the narrative, knowing full well that that's all you're going to get on mainstream media. Here is cut number 9, please.
Election.
All right, let's move on to Medicaid now. As you know, that's a big part of the debate as well. Here's what the American Hospital Association is warning. It writes, quote, the sheer magnitude of the level of reductions to the Medicaid program alone will impact all parties. Hospitals, especially in rural and underserved areas, will be forced to make difficult decisions about whether they will have to reduce services, reduce staff, and potentially consider closing their doors. Republican Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri calling this a hospital tax, Mr. Speaker. So does the House bill put rural hospitals and, frankly, the most vulnerable Americans at risk?
No, and you can underscore what I'm about to tell you. There are no Medicaid cuts in the big, beautiful bill. We're not cutting Medicaid. What we're doing is strengthening the program. We're reducing fraud, waste, and abuse that is rampant in Medicaid to ensure that that program is essential for so many people, ensure that it's available for the most vulnerable. It's intended for young, single pregnant women and the disabled and the elderly. But what's happening right now is you have a lot of people, for example, young men, able-bodied workers who are on Medicaid. They're not working when they can. That drains resources from the people that need it most. And so what we're doing here is an important and frankly heroic thing to preserve the program so that it doesn't become insolvent. This is not going to hurt rural hospitals. There's a lot of flexibility built into this. They keep saying that 7.6 million people is the figure that that is supposedly going to be affected by this. But when you look at those numbers and you break them down, this is high on public opinion polling. You're talking about 1.4 million illegal aliens that are receiving Medicaid right now. They're not entitled to that. This is for U.S. citizens in those vulnerable populations. There's about 4.8 million people that they're referring to that are able-bodied workers. If you are able to work and you're not, and you are riding on the public wagon, you need to help pull it. And by the way, Kristen, this is no draconian requirement. All we're requiring in the legislation is 20 hours a week. You can volunteer in your community, you can be in a job training program, or you can get to work. And this is my message to young men around the country who are taking advantage of the system. It is abusing the system. We're going to fix that, and I'm telling you that is a very popular thing among the American people because it comports with common sense.
Well, let's talk about that 4.8 million.
Now, she, of course, immediately jumped in and didn't want to hear anything he had to say. But to the people watching that, it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? It's got to get passed. It's just got to get passed. I'll get back to a little more Mike Johnson in a little bit, but I want to kind of revisit something because there's been an update that I just ran across. Normally when I'm in the other room producing, I can kind of watch all the press conferences and all the stuff going on while Hugh's on the air, and I can kind of keep him up to speed. Well, when I'm actually in here hosting, kind of hard to do that, so I've been keeping up on things online during the breaks, and I just ran across this, and it's just glorious. In the first hour, I think I played you a cut of Jamie Raskin, who is a Democratic member of Congress and Jewish. He was brought on the air as a guest in response to the terrorist attack in Boulder, Colorado, the Molotov cocktail launching because he didn't like Jews. And Jamie Raskin offered this up as commentary, cut number 17.
Across the country, we are still in the midst of a gun violence epidemic. So we need to be acting with due concern for human life. This is why, of course, we have been fighting for a universal violent criminal background check. We are for a ban on military-style assault weapons in the country. Our lax gun laws are a danger to everybody in America, and that's something that we can act with some legislative determination to turn around. But people have got to lead their lives, and people need to act with courage, but it is the responsibility of government to try to keep everybody safe from random arbitrary violence and bigotry and hate-motivated crimes.
So according to Jamie Raskin, we could have stopped this Molotov cocktail bomber if we would just have stronger gun laws in the United States, right? That's the vibe he's laying down there. This morning, just maybe an hour ago, at a press conference in Boulder featuring the FBI, local law enforcement, and the Colorado acting U.S. attorney, J. Bishop Gruhl, he set the record straight when it came to this shooter and when it came to Congressman Raskin's view that perhaps we need more gun laws to be able to stop violence like this. The acting U.S. attorney said that Mohammed Solomon actually tried getting a gun and couldn't because he was an illegal alien and they wouldn't sell him one, which caused him to resort to Molotov cocktails. So the idea that if we just take all the guns away, that's going to stop all the violence. Well, tell that to all the knife victims in Great Britain, where they've had a bunch of people stabbed by people that hate, pick your group there, and go on a stabbing spree. Well, then we take all the knives. Well, then you're going to have Molotov cocktails. Well, then take all the Molotov cocktails. Okay, fine. You can take away. The one thing you can't take away is what's at the bottom of why these people are going off to begin with, why they seem to want to kill Jews. Why? The guns aren't the things that are killing the Jews. It's the hate that's doing it. And there's only one ideological side in this country today, of late, that is causing and fomenting that hate. And it's not the political right in this country. It's just not. Are there lone voices amongst the right that are anti-Semitic? Oh, you betcha. They're marginalized. They're crackpots. Nobody pays any attention to them. But the squad in the House of Representatives, the Fever Swamp, the Rashida Tlaibs, the Ilhan Omar types, the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortezes, those are mainstream voices within the Democratic Party. And they are anti-Semitic. They just are. And that kind of language is tolerated. When the media abets the libel coming out of the Middle East because they just have no qualms about taking the anti-Israel side and putting it into print. But when an attack looks like it might be an anti-Semitic terror attack, well, we don't know for sure. We have to reserve ourselves. We have to hold back. That's pretty problematic, don't you think? We need more gun laws. Thanks, Congressman Reagan. Thanks for playing. Looks like that's got absolutely nothing to do with it. Let's play a little bit, by the way, why Mike Johnson's message resonates. Harry Enton, I mentioned this also as well. Harry Enton is over at CNN and has this new poll data out. Cut number 14.
After all of the waves, Kate Baldwin, after the last few months, the first 5 months of the Donald Trump presidency, right, the first 4 months of the Donald Trump presidency, that you expect that Democrats would have this massive lead on the economy. It ain't so. It ain't so. The party that is closest to your economic views, in November of 2023, it was the Republicans by 11 points. Now it's still within that range, still within that margin of error. Plus 8-point advantage for the Republican Party. How is that possible, Democrats? How is that possible after all the recession fears, after the stock market's been doing all of this, after all the tariffs that Americans are against, and Republicans still hold an 8-point lead on the economy? Are you kidding me? If it was just this one CNN poll, that would be one thing. But take a look at Reuters Ipsos. What do we see here? Party with a better economic plan. Well, in May of 2024, just before Donald Trump was reelected president, Republicans had a 9-point advantage. Look at where we are now in May of 2025. The advantage actually went up by 3 points. Now Republicans have a 12-point advantage when it comes to the party with a better economic plan. And again, this is after months of supposed economic uncertainty in which the stock market's been going bonkers, in which the tariff wars that Americans are against have been going on. And yet, despite all of that, the Democrats are down by 12 points on the economy. This speaks to Democratic problems on the economy better than basically anything that you could possibly look at.
And you know why? Do you know why Democrats have a problem? Because the Republicans are offering trade deals and solutions in the way forward. Democrats like Jasmine Crockett, quickly, cut 2.
Let's say you were elected to ranking member and the Democrats take the House and you become chair of that committee. Would you pursue impeachment?
I would absolutely at least do an inquiry. Absolutely. I mean, I think that
that's all I got. That's all they got. No economic vision. Just let the tax cuts expire. Everybody's taxes go up, and let's impeach Trump. That's the Democratic message. That's why they're getting hammered. I could give you the information about Karol Nawrocki coming back from, double digits in the Polish presidential election, and looks like he's won the runoff. Eked it out, but it's going to be a conservative president of Poland, which is a good thing. I could talk to you about that. I could talk to you about people on Mount Etna to go visit the volcano who got an unfortunate surprise when the volcano blew today, sending debris and ash all over the place in its biggest eruption since 2014, sending people scattering. You could talk about that, but you can't do anything about that. What you can do is talk about what goes on in summer camps in southwestern Oklahoma, like the ones, or the one that is run by our friends Brian and Jamie, who oversee an Angel Tree camp for the children of incarcerated people who don't really have access, don't have the means, financial or otherwise, to be able to go to a summer camp. And that's where you would step in. Here is what you can do with your $200 donation to send a kid to camp. Here's Jamie.
I believe God has an amazing heart for young ones, and we all have to come to God with childlike faith. And so if we can get these campers to camp when they're young and when they're open, and especially these campers who may be coming from hard places with special wounds and special challenges, it can put them on a life-altering path. You could be breaking generational incarceration and helping set their entire family on a different trajectory by reaching the child.
And all it takes to do that is a couple clicks of a mouse. HughHewitt.com is where you start. There's a banner at the top of the page for Angel Tree. Click on that banner and fill out the form, and you can change a kid's life. And certainly put them on a path and change a trajectory that you can feel good about at the end of the day. Or you can call 888-206-2764. That's 888-206-2764. And make your best donation. Maybe you're one of those Americans who's seen their income go up, 0.8 of a point, while inflation's only gone up 0.1. Maybe you've got a little more means than you did last month or last year, and you can send 5 kids to camp. We can take that too. I'm sure there's kids that would love a chance to go if you would be so kind as to click on that banner at the top of HughHewitt.com. Thank you very much. I want to wrap this segment up before we bring on Jim Talent next and read you a series of tweets by a guy online named Dan Bermawi, who runs an organization called Project X. He is a former Muslim and has now converted in his faith. And he has been at that walk before, not that specific one that got attacked in Boulder over the weekend, but he's been with that group before, and I want to read you this because it'll kind of bring it home as to the kind of people that this monster tried to firebomb. 16 months ago, a new friend invited me to join a group of Jewish community members who gathered every Sunday morning in a local park to show solidarity with the hostages taken by Hamas. I wasn't sure what to expect, but that Sunday I showed up. What I found was both humbling and unforgettable. There were around 50 people, mothers, fathers, grandparents, kids, even dogs, walking quietly and respectfully through the park. Some carried small Israeli flags, barely visible. No slogans, no chants, no aggression, just a silent, peaceful walk. They were part of something called Walk for Their Lives, a growing global movement of people who gather each week not to protest, not to provoke, but simply to walk for the hostages, to walk for peace, to walk in memory and in hope. Though I only joined them in person that one Sunday, I remained in their group chat. Every week I saw updates, photos from walks in different cities, people walking in rain, snow, heat, never once missing a week, never once lashing out in hate. Never once breaking from their quiet, dignified resolve. In all that time, I never saw a single word of hate toward Palestinians or toward the violent Palestine protesters. No rage, no bitterness, just a deep, aching solidarity with innocent lives held in captivity and a commitment to walk for them. Today, that same group was attacked in Boulder, Colorado. The pro-Palestine mob will say that they were provocative, that they brought it on themselves. Don't believe it. I've seen their hearts. I've seen their words. If you ever needed proof that this conflict isn't just about borders, but about whether Jews have the right to exist with dignity, look no further than a park in Boulder. It's well said. I am very pleased to be joined by a very, very good friend of mine. He appears usually weekly on my Dwayne's World podcast, which you can go to Dwayne World, DUANE World.com. Get the links and hopefully subscribe to that podcast. You can get links to my hot air columns there as well. But Jim Talent is a former senator from Missouri. He's a weekly guest here on the Hugh Hewitt Show as well, and usually hangs his shingle up at the Reagan Institute, running their National Leadership Council as the chairman there. Hello, Senator. How are you?
I'm fine. It's always good to be in Dwayne's World. Oh, wait a minute.
Yes.
We're still in Hugh's World, but it's run by Dwayne for today.
Yes, okay. It is Hugh's World run by Dwayne today. I've given this story kind of short shrift unintentionally all day today. I've made tons of references to it and how audacious it was, but I want to cover this with you because you're the NatSec guy. You're the national security guy. What did you make of this operation the Ukrainians pulled on Russia, Operation Spiderweb? And in case you missed it, the long and the short of it is they sliced the top off of a bunch of trucks, created a false top to them to get around detection, put a bunch of loaded to the gills drones, put the top on the truck, and then they had motors once they drove them 5,000 kilometers into the heart of Russia. And if you don't know where that is, that's about the width of the U.S. that they were able to traverse. Roll the tops off of these trucks, launch these drones, and take out about a third of the airborne nuclear assets that the Russians have. And then as an added benefit, the full Mission Impossible, these trucks will self-destruct in 5 seconds afterwards. Jim, this was a remarkable operation. Warfare has changed.
Yeah, it really has. And these losses are not something the North Koreans can replace by dipping into their supply of artillery shells. I mean, I think 41 strategic aircraft destroyed or heavily disabled. A cost I saw estimated at $7 billion. He lost a third of his cruise missile carriers. You know, it's maybe Putin will start reconsidering whether he wants to continue the war, because these kinds of losses are real, and I don't think they're going to be able to replace them. Look, Dwayne, I mean, Russia has been exposed in many ways, or the Russian military has been exposed as a paper tiger. They can't defeat the little country on their border, lose 1 million men, can't conduct maneuver warfare, and so far they've gained territory about the size of Rhode Island. So, you know, maybe Putin wants to reconsider President Trump's offer to come to the table with a ceasefire. And you notice, by the way, that Ukrainians were able to do this because we've loosened the restrictions on their use of systems. They can attack Russia in country. They attacked a base in Siberia, 2,500 miles
Siberia.
away from Ukraine.
It's astounding, Jim, what they were able to do.
A stunning achievement, and you are correct. This war is revising our understanding of ground warfare, and in certain respects, the war is very primitive because they haven't not been able to do combined arms warfare. It's been sequential warfare. I've described it as World War I with drones, but as time has gone on, both sides have become increasingly sophisticated in using unmanned assets, and our Army is studying it, and I hope learning from it.
Well, and that's where I want to turn to, is because, yes, you've got the operation for what it was, and a lot of people are comparing it as far as creativity and planning and execution to what the Israelis did with the pager operation, right? I mean, it's akin to that as far as its novelty. But if you're in the U.S., Costco, and I'm not talking about the store you go buy your stuff in bulk in. I'm talking about the Chinese Ocean Shipping Company that is an arm of the CCP. They have cargo ships with thousands of containers on them in U.S. ports that are within, 10 miles of strategic air bases all over the country. And we don't know what's in those shipping containers. all of a sudden our NatSec people have got to be looking around going, man, how vulnerable are we right now? Don't you think, Jim?
Right.
What kind of conversations are being had in the Pentagon right now?
Yeah, it's important that everybody, including the American people, understand the oceans no longer protect us, and not just from nuclear attacks, but cyber attacks, bio attacks, and in this case, as you say, the combined use of AI, remote control, and unmanned assets to launch pretty devastating attacks through a combined military and intelligence operation like this. Now, it's a coincidence, I think, maybe, but good news that the Army just announced their Army Transformation Initiative. Secretary Driscoll and General George just announced it. And
I saw that this morning. Yeah, I saw that this morning. Have you read through it? I mean, do you know many of the details? Can you summarize it?
I'll give you what we have. When the services announce something like this, they're long on concepts and short on detail.
Sure.
But it's not really that surprising. Now, some of this is long overdue changes to get billets out into the deployed force. So they're combining some headquarters, training and doctrine command, and futures command, and they're going to get those billets out in the deployed force. They call that reducing the tail so you can get more assets out into the tooth, or sharpening the tip of the spear, if you will. But they're also going to shift both the concepts of operations and procurement in the direction of unmanned assets, missiles, drones, all the kinds of things that we can get more cheaply if we'll focus on getting them more cheaply, that enable us to lower the risk of casualties and be more effective in asymmetric warfare. And it's overdue. Driscoll is a very good secretary, and people I respect think a lot of General George, so maybe we can do it. Now, I don't want to say I'm optimistic. We've tried these kinds of offset operations before, but it's good that they're trying to do it. And they also announced that they were going to do capabilities-based procurement, which is a really important change in the procurement regime.
Huge tax increase next year, about a $2.6 trillion tax increase. The child tax credit would go from $2,000 today back to $1,000. The standard deduction would, which now it would be cut in half. So you'd see a very direct impact. And in fact, depending on how many kids you have, it could be a very significant impact. But, the average family that makes $80,000 a year is going to see a $1,700 tax increase if Congress doesn't.
Welcome back, everybody. Dwayne Patterson for just a couple more minutes with former Missouri Senator Jim Talent of the Reagan Institute. I played that cut. It kind of comes back full circle to where I began today with Olivia Beavers. Do you think that there's anybody in that upper chamber that doesn't realize the stakes of what this vote really means on this bill? Do you think any of them really don't get it in spite of all the posturing?
Well, as it happens, I listened to your interview with Olivia Beavers, and I thought your analysis was spot on. I would put the odds on this bill passing very high, and it's for the reasons that you mentioned. Also because they really don't want, I don't think there's anybody on the Republican side who wants taxes to go up by thousands of dollars on Americans.
Right.
Another thing that's important is that Thune and Crapo in the Senate and Johnson and Jason Smith in the House have handled this very well. They're honest brokers. They're not trying to shove their own personal agendas down the throats of the other members and senators. They're just trying to get a fair deal. And then finally, I would say to you that the factions that are divided over issues, whether it's SALT or the level of cuts or the rest of it, it hasn't become personal. They all understand that the people on the other side of the divide on that particular issue are pursuing, their policy convictions, or in some cases, their political imperatives. It's not personal. It's not like it was in the fight over the McCarthy speaker's vote. And that makes it easier to compromise at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's well said. That makes perfect sense. Do you still think the July 4th deadline that they've set for themselves is doable, or do you think it's going to take longer?
Well, it's possible. but I wouldn't bet my own money on it. I'm going to be shocked if they don't get it done by the August recess. July 4th, that's a short time. Now they might delay if they're close, they might delay the recess. But that's a short period of time to get the bill through the Senate and then get it through conference. If you're saying to me, will the Senate pass it by the recess? Yeah, that's a lot more possible. And they're going to pre-conference. You and I were talking about this on the pod the other day. They'll pre-conference a lot of that. I mean, the staffs are already talking and isolating.
They're already doing that right now.
Exactly. But still, that conference committee's, I doubt it's going to be quick.
Jim Talent, can't wait to talk to you tomorrow when we tape the Dwayne's World podcast. That will drop on Wednesday. You can find Jim Talent over at the Reagan Institute. He is the chairman of the National Leadership Council there, or on X, sometimes when he tweets, at Jim Talent.